I want to begin with a story right here in Vancouver, though. I live in southeast Vancouver, and about 5 years ago, there was some violence going on in a home. It was a man, and almost definitely he was being violent towards women and children. I can say that, not even though it hasn't been reported, just because we know that's the direction of violence in our society. And someone was more scared of that man than they were of the police, so they called the police. And the police showed up, and they went to the wrong door. It was a basement suite. They went to the wrong basement suite, and the person who opened the door was a man who couldn't speak English. And the police immediately pulled him down, threw him on the ground, and beat his face in. He had broken bones in his face. That's not the response of a police force that's there to protect the women and the children. That's just two guys out there who have a badge and are looking for a chance to beat on someone who's vulnerable. They're not there. They weren't there to protect us. And those men, those two police officers, they didn't get in trouble. Was there a criminal charge against them? Of course not. Did they lose their job? No. And that has an effect because it makes people in my neighborhood and all across the city, all across this province, this kind of thing makes people afraid to call the police. It leaves women underprotected because they don't know if I hear violence going on in the apartment across the hall from me, I am thinking I have to do this calculus. Do I call the cops or not? Is this woman gonna die? If I call the cops, are they just gonna come and beat up a random neighbor of mine? So it makes people afraid. They're not there to protect us. Why aren't they there to protect us? It's because the police emerge in human society when there's a big enough gap between the haves and the have-nots, and they are there to protect the haves, to make sure that this corrupt, fucked up system keeps on running just fine to serve the rich, to serve the men, to serve settlers against natives, and that's the direction it takes. The cops are gonna serve the rich, they're not gonna serve the poor. They're gonna serve men, they're not gonna serve women. They're gonna serve white people, they're not gonna serve people who aren't white. So we see criminalization in our community. We see the criminalization of Native people. We see the criminalization of Filipino people, South Asian people, Vietnamese people, you name it. These communities are being criminalized. And this is part of a worldwide system of exploitation and oppression, and that's what Red Sparks is all about fighting. So I want to say thank you to Grassroots Women. For holding this event. And I want to say that this is something that goes on all around. Thank you to Ingrid for talking about the police violence in Mexico. I want to talk, I know there's comrades here who have visited the Philippines who know that in the Philippines, the police there are locking up people who are just trying to exercise their basic democratic rights. All around the world, we see the same pattern. And I really want to unite with the Grassroots Women call for democratic control of our police, because I want to echo what the speaker from Vancouver Rape Relief said. Now and then they get it right, and when that happens, we see that there are services that we need. It makes sense to me to have a service that we can call when we need protection. That doesn't sound bad to me in theory. It's the practice of it that is so wrong. Police are targeting the poor. That's exactly right. Eat the rich. I had another point. It's escaping me right now. So instead of wasting your time while I should try to gather what that is, I just want to give it up and say thank you. Oh, I remembered it. So the last thing, the previous police chief, the police chief who was in charge during the story I told was Jim Chu. And I remember the media made a big deal out of it. Oh, we have a Chinese-Canadian police chief. Did that mean anything when that guy got pulled out of his door and beaten? No, it didn't. And what was Jim Chu doing? He's traveling around making connections on the taxpayer dime. He's got all the connections in this building here with the VPD. He's got connections with police all across Canada, all across the United States. And yet the politicians, he's got all these connections. And now who is he working for now? Now he works for the Akalini Group. Who are the Akalini Group? The Akalini Group are capitalists who have made a fortune in property development, in being landlords, and all these types of things that are destroying our community. And that's who they serve. And they can go and get, this police chief can go and get that job next. You know, the father of Francisco Akalini, who's the current head of of the Aquilini group was Luigi Aquilini. Luigi Aquilini made a fortune in the 70s and 80s making illegal increases to rent in working class neighborhoods in the city, because the law was set up to serve the rich, not the poor. What could he do? He was allowed essentially to just make illegal increases to people's rent, and the only penalty that he could face for that was that if an individual person took it to the rental tenancy board and challenged it, he had to give back the extra profit. So by doing this, he's able to drive up the rents, make a fortune. And that's the kind of thing that puts working class women vulnerable. Because as housing gets more and more expensive, women are forced to stay with men who are potentially or just are abusive, to stay in relationships they don't want to have, to try to keep a roof over their head, over their children's head. And that's what the police are serving. They're serving the property developers, they're serving the landlords, they're not serving the people. Thank you very much.